Well, good evening, everybody. I have 6 o'clock now, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 27th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. And at this time, the prayer tonight will be given by Alderman Astor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask Lieutenant David Daniels with the New Bern Police Department to please come forward and give our opening prayer for tonight. Lieutenant Daniels has been with the New Bern Police Department for 20 years now. So.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity for all of us to come together tonight, not only in service to the city of New Bern, but as your servants, Father. I want to thank you for being a loving and awesome God and giving us all the courage to live our lives as you would have us live them. We ask you, Father, to be with this governing board tonight and give them the courage and the strength to lead this city as you would have them lead it. Father, we ask that you be with our first responders and our military and protect them with a guiding hand as they are the front line against evil and danger. Finally, Father, we ask for all of these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. And all of God's people said, Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderman Harris. Here. Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey. Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay. Before we get started tonight, we'd like to welcome Commissioner Johnny Sampson, Pastor Ethel Sampson, and I think we have Eric Quinn, who's running for NC House District 3. I'd like to welcome you to our meeting tonight. So at this time, we'll go to item number 3, the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Odom, seconded by Alderman Harris. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. We'll go to item number 10, presentation and discussion of Neuse Boulevard site and relocation of the city garage. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you recall, the Water Resources Division, our water department, will be relocating from its current site, which is the old water plant that's on Neuse Boulevard, adjacent to where the McDonald's is, to a new facility that's under construction right now on Highway 55. In September of 2016, as part of a presentation seeking direction regarding this water resources facility, the board was presented with options for the division's current site. One of these options included potentially relocating the city garage to this Neuse Boulevard site. Our current city garage is located over on Rim Street near the Ghent neighborhood, behind where the new Volt Center is going to be located. This presentation that we're going to provide you tonight, Chrissy's going to provide you, will get the board a plan that's current and hopefully inform you and hopefully get some direction from the board with regards to moving forward or holding back on this particular project. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Manager Cole.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. As Mark said, I'd like to provide you an update on a project we started with the previous board and get any guidance or course corrections that you might have. This part of the original plan has not yet moved forward or been budgeted because we were asked by the board prior to come back to you with some specific cost estimates, and we had been working on that over the past month or two, or a couple of months actually. So tonight we'll talk about, if I can get the slide to change. Wait for it. Got it. Background of the project, a little bit about the site information on the Neuse Boulevard site, some of the options that we considered as we looked at that site, our current recommended plan, and a cost estimate associated with that plan. So the Water Resources Administration and Operations is currently located on Neuse Boulevard. along with a large capacity water tank. I'll show you a couple pictures of that site if you're not familiar with it. I know that some, or hopefully all of you, are familiar with that site. It's as you're coming up from the hospital, it's on the left right before you get to Glen Burnie. The site was no longer meeting, had actually not been really meeting the water resources team needs for quite a while. Mr. Hughes obtained, he had an initial budget item in one of the budgets, 2016, I believe, and had obtained an actual estimate to renovate those buildings of over $400,000. So when we briefed the board on that potential project, board members questioned the validity or the need to spend that much money on some very old buildings at that site. And so Mr. Hughes, city manager, and I and finance director toured that site with some of the aldermen to kind of look at it, look at options, and we were asked to come back to the board with kind of all the options available for that site. The buildings at the front of that site are late 60s, early 70s vintage, and really not a lot has been done to them since then. So here's an overhead view of the site with Neuse Boulevard being at the bottom of that middle picture. There's a couple of brick-faced buildings on the Neuse Boulevard site. You've probably seen them as you've driven up Neuse. You can see those on the bottom right picture. The middle third of that site, there's an enormous water tank with all the supporting infrastructure underneath that property to move that water everywhere that it needs to go. In the back of the property are some metal garage type buildings that are used for storage of large vehicles, some work on some of those vehicles, and then some open-ended storage you can see at the top right. It's a long, narrow site, and currently there's no other access other than Neuse out the front, but one of the things that we are working with DOT on potentially proposing is a back exit onto Glen Burnie as well to help the flow of traffic through that site. So in September 2016, 3 options were presented to the board to address the facility needs of the water resources operation. The first one was a renovation of the current buildings on that site. The estimate that was provided was about $450,000. The second was to tear down those old buildings and rebuild them, and that was $750,000 estimate. And then to actually relocate that staff to the Highway 55 water plant site. We have a large amount of land at that site, and that was initially estimated at about $980,000. Because construction costs across the board have been going up over the past couple of years, the actual cost came in closer to $1.2 million. One of the benefits of the relocate option was that it would consolidate all the water staff and operations to one location out on Highway 55, which definitely would help the efficiency of operations for the water site. The previous board approved that relocation project in May of 2017, and as part of that discussion, we decided to move half of our First Street fueling capability out to that Highway 55 location as well, which added about $150,000 to the budget, but it would reduce the cost of moving the city garage because we would only be moving half the fuel capability. And I'll talk a little more specifically about our fueling sites and capability in a later slide. Since we cannot vacate the Neuse Boulevard site, that's because of the water tank and infrastructure there, that's not an option for us. Staff was asked to identify options. Some of those that were considered was to move the Parks and Grounds staff. That's the group that houses all of their equipment and operations out of the buildings on your right as you go into Glen Burnie Park. Another option we considered was to move the city garage, which with the large metal buildings and all the bays, it's a natural garage type location in the back of that site. So that's an option that we have talked about. We talked about moving the public building staff. Public building staff, Norm and his crew, they are out on at the First Street location right now currently. Knowing we're trying to kind of vacate First Street, that was one thing we considered. And then we're considering also the needs of the city across all departments for storage. We need open bay storage like you saw on there, and we need internal inside storage as well. We briefly considered moving some of our other teams, the accounting team, the information technology group, even talked about the utility business office, whether that would be a better central location. But where we have landed and continually come back to is to relocate the city garage from the First Street site, and then move half of our current fueling capability that is at First Street out to Neuse Boulevard. We would also relocate one heavy mechanic who currently works at the Public Works facility on Glen Burnie and consolidate his work on the large vehicles with the work that Ralph does at the city garage. And then utilize the remainder of the site, both the outdoor type covered storage and the indoor buildings to meet our storage needs, and we could potentially add a meeting space in those front buildings as well for meetings. One of the things this proposed option would do, it would allow us to move the entire public buildings team as well off of First Street. When we move that heavy mechanic, that frees up room for Norm and his crew to be able to move over to Glen Burnie and be with the rest of the public works staff, and that would completely vacate the First Street property of any city resources or equipment. Why move the city garage, and why do we want to continue to have a city garage? One of my first deep dives at the request of the city manager and the board when I arrived here was to look at an in-depth analysis of our garage function and our fueling capability. There really is a generous cost savings with doing both of those in-house. Conservative estimates were that the city saves between $50,000 and $90,000 a year by having our fueling capability. We get that fuel at such good wholesale price directly delivered to us that we save a lot of money even over some of the fuel card programs that are out there and available. The city saves between $200,000 and $650,000 a year with our current garage activities. Basically, if you look at the per hour rate of hiring a mechanic versus having one in-house, that cost savings just adds up over the hundreds and hundreds of vehicles that they maintain every year. The stuff we do in-house, do ourselves, the repairs, the oil changes, tire rotations, all the normal service plus repairs. And really that is a straight line number. The more work we can complete in-house and the more efficient we can be at doing so, the more money the city saves per year by having that capability in-house. And then, as has been discussed multiple times, our city garage that fuels both the county vehicles and the city vehicles has been a continual point of discussion about the traffic that creates over in that area through the Ghent neighborhood and onto First, Second, Park, all of that stuff. So we believe that also as well, managing our own fuel sites and stores is absolutely critical during an extended emergency operations, not having to rely on commercial providers. And we often will, if we know a hurricane's coming, for example, we will fill our tanks and then ask our staff to fuel off-site as long as possible until that hurricane comes, so we have a full amount of fuel heading into an event like that for all of our restoration operations. So right now we have 2 fueling sites. We have basically 2/3 of our volume is housed at that First Street location, and when they moved the electric department to Cale Road, they put an above ground fueling location there as well, which is roughly 1/3 of our fueling capability. The county utilizes our fueling site as well at First Street. They pay a fair share upcharge to help cover city costs, our administrative, operational, and equipment costs of providing that fuel. They contribute to that overhead. And because we are moving all the water resources operations, including all of their heavy machinery and vehicles, to Highway 55, the board actually approved splitting our fueling capability to 3 locations, to the Cale Road site, to the new Highway 55 site, and then to Neuse Boulevard if that's approved, or we would continue where we are on First Street. That reduces the risk even more in the event of a hurricane or major storm. We have 3 fueling locations for city vehicles. And the county in this instance would utilize the Neuse Boulevard site just because of some of the site control associated with Cale Road and Highway 55. So just a little bit about what that plan would look like were it to be approved. Sorry for the reorientation, but Neuse Boulevard is now on the right of this picture. So in those front buildings, again, we've got a lot of storage needs. We would move that from multiple locations, and we could potentially add a city or community meeting space in that first building there. Behind the water tank, you would have your city garage on the bottom of that photo, and then there's some covered storage that a bunch of departments could utilize in a smaller metal building across the way. We would put a fueling site in the back, an above ground fueling site, so we wouldn't have to worry about the below ground issues. And then we are working with DOT to get an access out the back to Glen Burnie, and initial conversations with them were very positive. Matt did a couple of drawings of what the city garage would look like. He's done a floor plan, and then we would just have to add some doors to a couple of the bays that are currently open. So that would require a little bit of renovation, but not a ton of renovation to do that. And then this is a rendering of what that above ground fueling station would look like. That's at the very back of the property, with Glen Burnie being behind those vehicles and Neuse Boulevard being to the left of those vehicles. It's the same that we will have at Highway 55 and that we currently have at Cale Road, but I don't believe the one at Cale Road has a cover. But again, there's so many vehicles that go through there. It would be a good fueling location. And then, again, we were asked to come up with some detailed cost estimates, and you can see here the total cost estimate of moving the garage, equipment, construction, fuel site is about $800,000. So with that, Matt, Jordan, Mark, and I are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chrissy, on the tank, I see one tank in the picture. Is that a split tank with diesel and gas in one?
It is, yes.
The most of the tanks that we've been getting from them, I believe, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, are 12,000 gallon tanks. They have eight and four split. 8 and 4. So you can have that mix. I mean, actually, you can have whatever you want. It could be all diesel if that's all you run, but generally we've been running split for our heavier machinery, probably like down at electric, where we have that one. It's probably 8,000 diesel and 4,000 regular. Is that correct? 4,000 unleaded, 8 and 4. So you can, but generally that's how
The
it's
garage would be 8
gas,
and 4 diesel.
Since we're going through this process, would it make sense to get a bigger tank? Typically, the size of the tank is somewhat minimal when you're making an investment like this. Would it make sense to have a bigger tank so we have larger capacity or not?
I'm not sure. Do they have a bigger tank? I believe they do.
I think the best way to answer that question is by the time we have got 3 sites, we've got the Cale Road site, the Water Resources site on 55, and then you add the 12,000 gallon tank to the city garage, we'll actually have more capacity than we currently have now. So,
Okay.
That's the benefit of the third site.
Okay. Thank you.
Question about the tank that's currently at First Street. What happens to that, the fueling station, whatever? Do we dig all that up, pull it out, or we just fill it with sand, or what's the plan?
We've started working with the state to figure out what that process is, but I think you're correct. You're on the right lines. We would have to remove those tanks from the ground once the site is no longer in use.
Okay. And is that cost put into here, or no?
That cost is not.
I think it would be impossible without knowing what the process is to be able to add that cost in here at this time, but it's not included. It's basically the answer.
So I'm just curious, I don't know what the procedure is, so does the state, once you abandon something like that, are you required within so many days or a certain time frame to do something about it, or can it just sit there?
Like I said, we're currently trying to figure out the complete process. I don't have those answers. We can certainly research that and get back to you when we have those
Yeah, I
answers.
don't know if it is, is it something that has to come through this budget, next budget? Just curious.
What kind of breakdown would we have as far as, this is pretty much a general fund item, but there are areas of it that would probably be enterprise connected. So how are you thinking about breaking that down?
I'll take that one. The city garage itself within the budget is allocated to the departments based upon the vehicle usage. Being that they would continue to operate and perform repair functions and maintenance functions for all the vehicles of the fleet, this debt service associated with the improvements to the garage would be held in the garage division. So therefore, it would be allocated, even though it's shown in the general fund, that reimbursement happens through the interfund transfers. Or reimbursement, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question, just being new to this. On the slide, it states that the county fuels, how much money do we make off of them?
I don't know what the dollar.
It's a 13 cents per gallon upcharge, but we'd have to get you back to you on the actual number that generates every year.
Okay, so is there any possibility of seeing as how they benefit from us having that there's a collaboration maybe they would put towards?
Help us pay for it?
Yeah, help us pay for it, and then we just share
That
gas.
13 cents per gallon is intended to cover their portion of costs of replacement equipment, operations, maintenance of the equipment. So I think, can't speak for them, but I think that was intended to cover costs of stuff like replacing the equipment.
Well, I guess what Jamie, I think she's asking is, if they went in and, let's say, split the cost of the Neuse Boulevard tank in that system, and then they paid the rate that we pay, but they've got some skin in the game, would that be a possibility?
It's
Is
a
that what
collaboration.
We can
between cities.
investigate that, but I think Chrissy's right in that the increase, we just increased that, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
2 years ago?
Used to be
It was a ridiculous number back before that, and we just increased that with the intent to kind of cover some of those costs. But let us look into that and see, the question that you brought up previously, Alderman Bingle, with regards to closing that site. We'd need to look at that too. I'm thinking out, further on if they would have any kind of responsibility in that as well. But I don't know if that was included in that fee as well. But we can investigate that.
One more question is, that I heard that meeting or community spot be within this, which diagram would that be? That one you would?
No, that's the long garage building in the back. What we're talking about is those two brick buildings on the right, and you can see them at the bottom right in that picture. They're the street-facing buildings. We didn't include any estimate for renovation of those buildings because of the storage needs we have. However, it's probably safe to say that Matt and his team with some materials could go in and make a usable space out of what's there. I don't want to speak.
Some of this discussion, I remember Alderman Kinsey and Alderman Odom and I physically went out there with the assistant manager and manager and others, and Jordan, I believe, was there. A couple things that we were concerned about is as we want everybody on the corridor to fix their buildings up. I'm a little bit embarrassed at what city stuff. You can't ask individuals to fix their buildings up when your city stuff looks like this. Part of that physical inspection was, I remember there's a major piping that we were going to run in, going to be very problematic with the brick building. But part of that, I think, this consensus of the aldermen was that our city employees deserve better, have places to conduct business than if you physically went in there and saw what that looks like. So, having said that concerns me, the thought of having community meetings in that, because it's deplorable.
Okay.
It's just something that anybody deserves better than what that is. So, from there, we started talking about not spending $400,000 and demolishing it, but then we came up with a problem of the major pipe artery coming from Code City or whatever. And I think we had decided if it got demolished, we were going to just leave a slab there so that we didn't in any way disturb that. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
So from there, now we're back talking about after not spending $400,000 and spending $800,000, we're back talking about doing what we weren't going to do, and that is we were not going to fix those buildings up. Is that what you recall? I mean, because of all the lead paint and asbestos.
Yeah,
and
and
all
I
that.
guess on the map or the site plan that Chrissy showed, it says storage, and I don't know that a whole lot of renovation would be required in those buildings if they were going to be used as for storage. If it's going to be used for anything else, meeting space, then it probably would need to be addressed.
I think the intent
I want
of,
to clarify something. Is it 1.2 million or is it 800?
Well, it's-
now 1.2 was for Jordan's facility out at the water
I
plant.
see. Okay, maybe that was.
So let me address, I don't think, Mayor, that we're proposing at this time this be a community building. What we're saying is this could be, if the board so choosed it to be, a community space. For instance, where our former stormwater division used to be, or former location where our stormwater division was, over at the Volt Center site, they've since moved over to Public Works. There was a facility that we had, the old Leaf and Limb building, if y'all know which one I'm talking about. Throughout this AMI process, we've had to keep meters for at least a year just for storage, because once we shift out the AMI meter, or the old meter, to put in the AMI meter, we have to keep the old meters just for the purpose of, if there's any questions regarding billing, we would be able to pull that meter back. Excuse me. So that's a place where, we've been going through thousands of meters a year trying to take care of that. So, excuse me. Y'all go ahead.
Chrissy, can I ask you a question while Mark
That's to me, that is the worst experience.
Let me ask you a question, Chrissy. You said you were going to try, you're working with DOT to get an entrance or an exit on South Glen Burnie. Would that go out to the traffic light? Because you know, getting them on and off of First can be a challenge with big old slow trucks.
Alderman Astor, to get to the stoplight, we would have to gain an easement from an adjacent property owner, and we have not engaged in that discussion. We would just have two options to exit the site, one onto Neuse, which is a not too difficult right turn, obviously a little more difficult left turn, and then same onto Glen Burnie. So we were just trying to maximize our efficiency of that site, I guess.
Right. Would that come out on the Neuse Boulevard side of that car wash? Because that's in a curve right in there, isn't it, Matt?
It's just past the curve. It would actually come out on the opposite side of Neuse Boulevard from the car wash, directly across from the Food Line entrance.
Okay.
Alderman Astor, at the top of the screen up there at the top, next to the blue, that's the car wash. As you see that white long rectangular box, that's the car wash.
Okay. Well, and there's no concerns about the amount of traffic and some of these big trucks getting in and out of there and gaining access. I mean, that's a busy road.
And that's one of the reasons we've wanted to keep that second entrance also on Neuse Boulevard. If we get some of them larger vehicles, per se a fire truck, and they actually wanted to pull all the way through and exit out on Neuse Boulevard, they'll have that option. The day-to-day vehicle traffic, of course, we push them towards Glen Burnie Road, but we've got that second option if needed.
Okay. And, you made the comment that we were going to allow the county to utilize just this site. There's no reason why you cannot, or is there any reason why you cannot let them use some of the other sites? And the reason behind that is that I've sat in line there before when these cart buses pull up, and you've got all kinds of city trucks sitting there waiting in line. And it's a busy site, and it's just 20, 30 minutes waiting for a bunch of cart buses to fuel up. And if we spread them out a little bit, if there was any way of tracking it, it might be a little easier for our staff.
Cart buses, talking about the county.
The county, yeah. I mean, they seem to, everybody wants to gas up right at lunchtime, just after lunch. I've been sitting in that yard before and had to wait 20 minutes for, 4 or 5 county vehicles. And I'm not against the county fueling up there. I'm just wondering if we spread the love out somewhere that it would cut down the congestion on our staff.
Very good question, Alderman Astor. I think the intention of the repurposing of the garage site is to have more of a 24-hour facility like we have now at our current garage facility. The site at Kell Road and the site at the Water Resource Operation Facility would be limited to the hours of operation of those facilities. So with the county vehicles coming through with the sheriff's cars and the other maintenance staff and the carts vehicles, if they were to come through any other time during the middle of the day, they'd be basically cut off from access from those other 2 sites. So we're trying to keep a 24-hour access site for them like we currently have with the central garage. And hopefully by spreading the remainder of our fleet to the other 2 sites, you won't have the backups that you currently experience at the city garage that we've had for so many years.
One of the other things I'll add too, Alderman Astor, is when you talk about the ingress, egress of large equipment and vehicles, one of the advantageous things with the access to the Glen Burnie side of that site is that there is a multi-directional turning lane in the middle. So you technically have a 5-lane road there versus on Neuse, where that location is. You're coming up to the intersection of Glen Burnie and Neuse, and that's actually a turning lane that manages traffic that's going to turn on to Glen Burnie going, I guess that would be south. So the turn onto Glen Burnie, once you made that turn, you could actually get over into the multi-directional turning lane on Glen Burnie and turn in whenever there's an opening, which is going to happen. But it provides a lot more safety with regards to getting the larger equipment in there, I would say.
Okay, well, I'm satisfied if you are. I just wanted to make sure that was not going to be a hazard for some of our employees with the larger vehicles. Trying to get in and out of that South Glen Burnie roads can be a challenge.
And I think too, as you're with your knowledge of fire engines and fire trucks, with coming from the Elizabeth Road Fire Station, obviously they're going to make a right turn in, so that's nice. And then they'll have a multi-directional turning lane to be able to turn back out on, or they could go out the other entrance and make a turn and go and circle back around through Simmons or whatever if they want to come back through. But I think it'll be pretty easy. And then obviously Public Works, with it being just on the other side of the intersection there, catty corner, I guess, they would be able to have access off of Glen Burnie coming in and refueling.
Yeah. You're talking about this is going to be a 24-hour day operation. Have you thought about putting security cameras on it this time?
Yeah.
We've included that in the budget.
Good.
Yep.
And then just one more comment. When you declare those tanks on Rim Street as abandoned and they have to be removed, I would be willing to bet you're looking at $100,000 or better to remove those things. I may be wrong, but it's going to be expensive.
I have a question. You finished?
I'm through, yeah.
You finished?
Actually, real quick, Alderman Best, if you don't mind. The other point about this fueling facility, Alderman Astor, is the way it is designed, you'll have much less cars blocking other cars. There are actually 4 gas pumps and 2 diesel pumps embedded in that design.
That's
without the backup that one vehicle would cause on folks waiting there.
So do regular people get gas here?
No, just city vehicles.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say.
It's controlled by a card that all the vehicles have, and that's what's utilized.
Might need to get into the business of having a
All
gas
of that.
station.
Yes, I know you wanted to split the fueling capacity to a 3rd location, so Highway 55 would be the 3rd location. So I was looking at your costs here. What does it take cost-wise to fuel one of those tanks?
Mm-hmm.
So, you wanted to add a 3rd one, so I just wanted to know what.
I'll scroll through the breakdown and figure out exactly what the cost of the tank itself is. The total number I've actually got a full proposal for the gas tank, which includes the pumps, the canopy, and everything associated with it, and it's $220,000. But as far as the tank itself, if you'll give me just a couple minutes, I'll flip through here and let you know exactly what the tank costs.
Okay, so you're saying the fuel is in that $220,000?
No. We have to get the fuel 3 times a week,
Okay.
at least.
That's correct. No, that is an empty tank we'll get, and then we'll fill it we'll fill it as we, once it's complete.
Okay, I was just wondering how much it's gonna cost to fill the tank since you're adding on a third one.
But that's basically like revolving credit, because we spend it and get it, so I don't think that's really money that would be a big concern in that regard, because we always, that's revolving. I think more, we need to know, this number right here, but
Well-
I still wanna know that amount. Though.
Yeah, I would really like to know what the cost is. I know you're saying that, the county gives us
Well, Matt, what do you,
13 cents
Let's just
back,
cover
but
it.
still,
Rough math, we pay about $2.10 a gallon times 12,000 gallons, so 24,000
Every time we fill it up.
every time we fill it. if it's
And
on
that's
that
per
tank.
tank, so if we have 3 tanks, we're out 70.
But we're not
75,000.
using it out of one facility. We won't have to fill us with the frequency that we do now at all 3 sites. So,
Spreading it out.
spread out. And keep in mind, one of the key components of what we're trying to achieve here is the redundancy of having fueling during emergency access opportunities, and we need to get fuel during hurricanes, because we've had to shut down the fuel facility just to city staff so that we could operate our fire trucks and stuff like that, which means that the county programs sometimes suffer from that. And
well,
that's
it's a wonderful idea to have the fuel capacities for emergencies. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you would need to, it could be a week or 10 days before we could get a fuel truck in here if we had a bad hurricane. So we definitely need the capacity. Where is the Highway 55 site?
just past Pleasant Hill. There's a water plant. It's
Oh,
a water
okay.
plant.
So basically, that all the water department vehicles would be using that one. All the electric department is currently probably using the Kill Road.
Yep.
So
As well as your fire trucks.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, the fire
Fire
trucks
road
are
stations using it. Okay.
yep, using them out there.
Don't misunderstand when I just asked the question about the cost, because I'm all for having a third facility. I just wanted to know the cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the-
I
Just
want
clear
to know
that up.
the amount that we get from the city, because if we're saying 13 cents, hypothetically, they only use 12,000 gallons a year, right? I don't know if it's per day. I need to see those numbers, because
Well, they're paying 13 cents plus the cost of the gas. So.
I would say they use a heck of a lot more than 12,000 gallons a year.
13 cents over what we pay.
over.
Yeah.
So, okay. How much do we pay?
$2.10.
210.
It varies depending on market, but we pay roughly
So they pay
$2,
13 cents
$2.10.
over. Okay, I thought it was just 13 cents.
No, we recover the
Yeah, we
cost of
really-
the fuel plus an upcharge that helps cover our overhead. So the fuel itself, the fuel is delivered to the location. When an electric vehicle fills up, it is then charged at that $2.10 rate
Okay.
to the electric department, and you'll see in every budget, there's a fuel budget line, and that's what it's charged against. So every department budgets for their fuel costs to run their operation.
Okay.
So that cost is spread
I'm
across
trained
all
now.
the department budgets.
I was gonna get off for a minute, so we're there, because I was 13 cents. We really gotta discuss
Well, and
this.
that's a lot better than what it was a few years ago. Because if I'm badly mistaken, it wasn't just a penny, 1 penny. So staff negotiated this for 13 cents versus the penny it used to be.
Wow.
I know that, I don't know your complete breakdown on your number 4, building modifications, 200,000, but I would not, my thought on, I would not spend any money on the buildings on the Neuse Boulevard. I would demolish them. And as far as a community center, I'd be looking somewhere else. I think that's a tremendous amount of traffic there. If you look up the road 10, 20, 30 years, it's not going to get any better. So I don't think that's necessarily the most ideal location for community events anyway. So I'm trying to start getting the board into building some direction. What are you going to do with the old garage? Would that not be good storage? In lieu of the possibility of modifying these buildings for storage, why would you not use the first streets?
Mayor, we could potentially use that for storage. It's only a 2-bay. Actually, they may have 3 now. Drive-through. There has been some discussions as far as potential mechanics programs with the community college. I don't know whether that's going to come to fruition. I kind of worry about even mentioning it, but they do have some auto mechanic programs out there at the community college, so they could potentially do some workforce development programs out there. So they may be interested in the facility themselves. Not so much for the fueling aspects, obviously. That'd be something that they probably wouldn't need, but from a garage and lifts and things like that access, they could potentially use that. So.
And I'm still a little fuzzy on the complete breakdown of the $803,000, how that's going to be expensed.
So it's based on vehicles is how we do the allocation. Is that correct, JR?
I'm talking about individual enterprise funds, then general fund. However we finance that, how is it going to be prorated?
Mayor, what's going to happen is we'll take the debt service associated with this and apply it to the garage, and then basically it'll be allocated based on the number of vehicles that each one has. I do not know the exact percentages off the top of my head, so I do apologize for that. But but each fund will pay their rateable share of that debt service.
In other words, like I think Alderman Astor said, the water department will probably going out 55. Electric's going Cal Roads. That pretty much leaves police and fire and public works is going to be using this. Is that how it's going?
Because it's not just a fueling station, it is a garage that the utilities will still be utilizing. The garage itself is basically treated. We treat it like it's its own separate entity. Meaning it charges the other departments for what it does. So, and we just allocate it out ratably. Okay. So, like I said, the other departments, the water, sewer, electric, they will be paying a share of that regardless.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Scott makes a good point. So there's two separate things that happen within a department or a division's budget. You have fuel and you have garage allocation. The garage allocation is where any debt service, any of the employee personnel costs, the operating costs of the garage come out of. The fuel cost is a per gallon share of whatever they've used. So both of those items kind of leave the.
That's a pretty absolute fuel.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick, back to the mayor's comments. I've had a chance to ponder on what he said, and I do think that if we were to move forward with this, something if it's just the facade standpoint for those buildings along Neuse Boulevard, there's been such investment made. There's a construction company there. We've got really 3 new fast food restaurants, fairly new. That corridor, I think we should take care of our own stuff ourselves. And again, if it's just a simple facade improvement on those buildings, if we do decide to use them for storage, I don't think that would require much renovation on the interior, because my concern is, I guess I wouldn't have a problem if you tear it down, but we're not ever going to build anything else there because of the underground infrastructure. So then what are you going to do it may look better, what I'm trying to say, it may look better to improve the facade of those buildings and leave them versus tearing them down and just having grass or bushes.
Parking lot.
I think that's certainly something to consider. If the board has no interest in community center and storage is something that we certainly need. Facade improvements similar to the adjacent ones. The old Brad Company, I think, was one that got a facelift, along with some adequate landscaping. Is probably something that I think we could do at a very easily.
Is it possible to large fencing or, not see-through with some landscaping in front of it? I mean, then you wouldn't even have to do facades in the building and just kind of put them behind and leave them for the storage. I mean, then it would at least close the area because, again, you want it secured.
Sure.
You don't want people wandering in there. You're not going to have the general public coming in there for any reason.
And it's pretty secured now because of the nature of what we operate with there, which is the water. So I don't think we'd need a whole lot of fencing improvements other than maybe some stuff around the backside or whatever. But I'm pretty sure it's pretty secured now, right, Jordan? And with that being said, it's probably more of, like you said, the landscaping fence, the screening, stuff like that would be used that would help block the visual impact of what we have on site. And then the facade improvements on the front, and that's what I was kind of indicating with the landscaping and maybe some facade improvements that would make the Neuse Boulevard corridor look a lot better. And with the entranceway on the Glen Burnie side, really all you would see at that point is just a gate of some sort or whatever into the facility in a driveway.
And not to beat a dead horse, I apologize, but just one more point of clarification. All of the fueling sites, the tanks, the pumps, the maintenance on those pumps, all of those costs, regardless of where that fueling site is, goes through the garage and is allocated out like all of the other garage costs. Just because it's at Cale Road doesn't mean that it still doesn't feed through our garage and get allocated. So when someone fuels at Cale Road or 55 or First Street, that cost goes to that department, and all the overhead costs are allocated out.
Well, I have to say, doing this would certainly make some of the people on Rim Street, Spencer Avenue happy.
Amen. They'll be very happy.
Yeah.
So you can check that off the list.
So what do you need from us tonight?
Well, we've presented you with an estimate on the budget. We kind of need some direction to move forward or continue moving forward with this. Obviously, we need to put together bid documents for the construction, and are you needing any further engineering work?
No, in short, we're about 85% done with all the stuff that needs to be done to get real pricing, bid prices, and out. So we'll wrap those things up, get some bid prices, and then our plan is to be ready to go into construction, do what we need to do as soon as Jordan and his staff move out end of June, early July.
The only question I would have is close to, at this time of year being budget season, is this something that, we're fixing to go right into the budget workshops. Is this something we want to take action on? How time sensitive is it to, obviously I know you guys would like to move on with it, but is it something that would be worthy to wait until we get into our budget discussions?
I don't think it would hurt us time-wise a bit to lump it into the budget work sessions and discussions then. That would be fine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Matt, I think you probably would be good to start looking at what it would cost to remove or abandon those old tanks.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Because I believe that's going to be expensive.
And I think it would probably be appropriate for us if we do decide to move forward with this, that cost be included to be the project fund. Right now, like the water department has a project fund for the relocation of the water department. We would need probably a similar thing for the garage relocation project fund. And then as part of that garage relocation, there would be some remedial work that would be necessary on that current site that would be lumped into that project fund budget.
Alderman Odom, I know you kind of led the charge on this. Before we proceeded to where we are now, the old board looked at whether or not we wanted to be in the fuel business. And if you would elaborate a little on, you remember we did all the research into just possibly getting, I know Park County, they go to different approved locations.
I think
So
Chris,
go through that a little bit.
yeah, I
Because
think Chrissy covered that in her presentation, that it was a deep dive into not only the garage aspect but also fueling. I think Chrissy, correct me if I'm wrong, but even some of the rebates that we would get from a corporate standpoint did not offset the savings that we get when we buy in bulk. I think you also factored in travel times and the convenience of being able to get gas at one place versus having to drive to one of the city locations. That was all included.
Those types of programs are definitely better than paying retail costs, but they're not as good as our wholesale rates, even when you include the cost of maintaining our pumps and all that stuff. And then there's the consideration of being able to control the fuel supply during an emergency, I think, is another important factor.
Mark, so I just want to understand, so the board approved this a year ago, or gave direction to move forward on it. So any of the engineering or civil plans, was any of that appropriated and in the budget?
A lot of that stuff is kind of, we've been doing some preliminary work, but some of that would still need to be done as far as final. Matt, you might want to. We didn't budget any. Okay.
So none of this has been done?
No.
I think what we were doing, we were moving ahead expeditiously on the water resource.
Yeah,
department,
that has been budgeted for.
And then
with
we were going to
regard
catch our breath for a month or two and then tackle
Yep,
this as
that's
soon as we
correct.
got where we wanted to be on the new facilities out at the water plant.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, a little concern is that the original numbers have gone up a couple $100,000. So what is your contingency factor on this at $803,000? Is that going to wind up like the the one out there on the highway at a couple $100,000 more, or do we feel more comfortable about this?
I would say, Mayor, because there's very little construction involved, it's more of a remodel of the current building. You probably won't see the jump in the cost that we saw with the actual building cost for Jordan's facility.
And site work's a pretty significant portion of that too.
I think the two that would be most flexible would be the site work and the building modifications. I think the rest of those are pretty much on the money.
Yes, sir. And a couple of those pieces of equipment for the actual garage operations, that's one of those we would have had to replace one or two of those, every other year anyway. So that
I see you got
probably
7% there. That's why I was asking, because I would think you probably wind up a little more than that on the last one. It was probably a little over 10. But that's okay. 7.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this?
Yeah, what's the board's pleasure on this? Do you want, and one thing I would encourage the new members to do, you might want to get with staff and go out there and just physically take a look at that site. It helps
So
some
we
of
need to
us.
plan a field trip for
Okay.
things.
Well, we'll
I mean,
definitely.
Excuse me, go ahead. I think we should proceed and just have them put the figures in the budget and let's look at it and at budget time.
I agree with that.
Okay, now we have a motion by Alderman Astor and.
Motion or is it direction?
Okay, well,
Which do you need?
Okay,
Direction?
what's the consensus of Alderman Astor's statement?
I'd say, let's fold it in, let's look at it and move forward.
Direct.
Okay. Does
So,
anybody have a problem with that? And would you restate what you wanted to do? I think you wanted to proceed.
Yeah, let's proceed and have Matt to put it in the 2018, 19, FY 18-19 budget.
Okay.
Then we're getting ready to start working.
The only other thing, I would just really, if you haven't done it, I would really do I would really study the traffic patterns there. I know you talked about turning left on Glen Burnie and getting into that suicide lane or whatever. That works pretty good as long as it's not stacked up too bad at certain peak times of the day. So I doubt it would be stacked up enough to where you couldn't turn left, but it could. As long as y'all do feel comfortable about the traffic.
Have the electric department, of course, they probably won't be over that much, but what about the fire department? Are you comfortable with your equipment on and off South Glen Burnie like that? And
I don't really have a problem with either tower, it's 55, but I think it should be a problem.
Okay.
and I think, it becomes a matter of modifying your means of getting there to make the entry easy. If I was doing it, smartly, I would come from the state employees credit union side of Glen Burnie or the highway side of Glen Burnie. Said I've got to make a right turn only if I head to the tower. The
Some of
majority.
these trucks don't make good right turns.
Okay.
Some of them are left turn only.
Sure.
Okay, have you got your direction?
Sounds like
That's pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Is everybody okay with that?
I'm perfect with it.
Okay.
It's something that's needed.
Okay, let's go to item number 11. Consider adopting a budget ordinance amendment fiscal year 2017-18. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. On November the 14th, 2017, an ordinance was adopted amending the list of city-sponsored events to include a New Year's Eve celebration. This will be a family-friendly event that includes a kids zone, DJ, live entertainment as well. In order to begin preparations for this event, entertainment needs to be booked and general supplies purchased ahead of time. Sponsorships will be sought to offset the cost of the event, but a budget amendment for the amount of $16,500 is sought to begin planning the event. There's a memo that's included in your packet, as well as the budget ordinance amendment from Mr. Sabatelli, our Director of Finance, and we're happy to answer any kind of questions you may have.
Board have questions?
Statement, more than a question, comment. I would at this point vote no to do this. And what I'd like to do is I've been in the meeting with Alderman Odom and Alderman Harris. I believe Alderman Odom has secured a sponsorship already. Is that correct, Alderman Odom?
Correct.
Have we secured that?
Yes.
Okay, in the amount of $10,000. I would rather go ahead and get that sponsorship in. I know the reason we're doing this is because we have to put a deposit on a band. I didn't see that in the paperwork. That's what concerns me. If we're going to do this, I want all the details. I'm just concerned about the whole event by itself because I know what it takes to put these events on. I'm very concerned about the total cost of it. What is it going to cost us? The volunteers, other sponsors. I really rather have a public-private partnership where if this is a Parks and Rec event, do we have a private entity on the other side helping us? I would rather not have a budgeted item or just create a fund. What do you call it? A project fund to put the $10,000 in. We go ahead and secure the band if that's what you want to do, and then we go out and either get the sponsorships or we get a nonprofit to take this event, partner with us, and get the rest of the money. But I'm very concerned about doing something like this.
So the budget minutes for $16,500, that's not taking into consideration the $10,000. So really, right at this point, it's $6,500 for us, right?
And it's also, Mr. Stevens, I believe there was some capital cost to buy some equipment for the first year of this. Was it?
Yeah, we'll have to have a bear or whatever we're planning on dropping for New Year's Eve and some other events like that. Anything else, Mr. Hughes, that you had? General supplies.
I think that was $3,000 or $3,500.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's a one-time do.
That would have been nice to just have seen it in our information here so the public could at least looked at if these are the expenses we're asking for. If it's, what is the deposit on the band? And what is the band? I mean, is it $5,000? Is it $10,000?
Depends on what kind of band you
We can't
want.
give all the good details yet. I mean, it's
So
a
you
New
don't say
Year's
event,
Eve
so when you
event.
say I headline
Now
event.
you done spoiled it and told them we're gonna be dropping a bear.
Okay.
So I mean, I understand what you're saying to be transparent, but
Well, and the other thing is, again, when people say to me, hey, why are you spending $16,500 over here? Duff Fest, I'm sitting in their meeting and they're asking for money from that, which they can't seem to get, or they need more funds. How do I explain that? So that is my
right
dilemma right now.
And I know that I wanted to basically make a statement that even though that it's being done downtown, and I respect that you represent the downtown, I feel like this is something that is beneficial to the city, to the community, and it's something that needs to happen. And I feel like we do need to put some upfront money. I don't think we're going to have a problem as a city to be able to get sponsorships or nonprofits to come in to, facilitate and even regain that money back. But we do need to fund ourselves so that we can at least just move forward, because
Then why don't we just have a project fund, put the $10,000 in the project fund? I don't understand, that would give us a good basis, get our $10,000 from that sponsorship and then request the other. We should be able to.
Mr. Sabatelli, isn't a project fund a one-time? You would have to set one up every year?
Yeah, we would
I'm
have
not
to
sure.
set one
I
every year.
apologize. I
It
may
would
not
not be
have had the
appropriate
right
for this sort of activity, no.
so can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. What you say?
I just basically asked him, was a project fund, it's like a one-time project. You would have to close it out at the end of the project, then you'd have to open up one each year that you did this.
I would think you may want to do that, just so you know your revenue and cost, and then if another community organization wanted to pick it up, they potentially could. Now, Foster, this may be unfair to ask you, but for the flotilla, I know that you go out and get sponsorships for the flotilla. They try to defray the cost of the flotilla, which is a city-sponsored event. How do you budget that funds, or the sponsorships go out? Do you guess every year how much you're going to raise in sponsorships, or do you set a certain level? You must raise X amount in order to do that.
That's right. Normally our goal is to raise about $2,000 for the flotilla, and we do pull that out of our general fund through different funds for parks and recreation. So
You pull out $2,000, but then you raise $2,000?
that's correct.
So the total event cost you $4,000?
No, $2,000.
You fund yourself.
We offset what our general fund allocation is with the sponsorships.
Alderman Bangle, if I might, basically what we do is we budget the expenditure, and then we also budget a revenue associated with that as well. So there is an offset, and then we just track it as needed.
And so that's why I think it's a great idea that we go ahead and budget it, because we're gonna get sponsorships. This is gonna be an amazing event. People are gonna line up to want to be part of New Bern's New Year's Eve with the bear dropping. It's gonna be the first time ever, and they're gonna want their name on everything, and it's gonna be great for the whole city. So if we just put the money there, we're gonna get donations, we're gonna get that money back, so it's a clean sweep.
So is Foster in charge of this event?
I got a question for you. I mean, this is going to be a nice event like you're talking about. People from all over the county is going to be here. Why can't we ask Craven County to participate?
Can we just get this fund transferred and we'll be
Well, I
able to
have no
work on
problem
it?
doing that, but still, why can't we ask Craven
I
County
mean,
to participate?
I think it's a great idea for us to, bridge that gap between the city and the county, but at first, we need to be able to secure a band, and these bands are very, you have to get them because then you get bad bands.
What's it going to cost to secure the band?
Well, you want to be able to have working capital. I used to do this back in New York, and you want to be able to have some funds where you can say, this is the band we want, this is what we're working with, this is what we're going to give you, and if you want to be able to have money in the fund to be able to not manipulate, but
Got 10,000, so are you ready to go?
but
It's gonna be more than 10,000.
I can't say that, but we want to have options, and so with that, we're going to get sponsorship.
And what I can tell you about the bands is we've looked at quite a variety of bands, and the average cost is anywhere from $5,000 on up. And New Year's does have a premium with it, so and a lot of bands are going. They're being booked now, and so that's one of the reasons why we'd like to go ahead and look and see what bands are available and go ahead and at least book them now.
Yeah, because you have to do a deposit, and that's usually 50%.
I just know there's lots and lots and lots of details. I worked on both the first nights in beginning of 2010 and end of 2010, and I know how much it can cost. I know all the volunteers it's going to take, the staff workers. The cost will be immense at the end of the day. And again, I would like to have seen a budget, what we potentially think it's going to cost. If it rains, what's the rain plan? Do we have a covered stage? Do we lose the money on the band? I mean, I can go question after question after question. I think it would be awesome. Anything that we have in our community is awesome. If this is your game, and if this is your special events person is running this, then that's great. But I just want to see the details, because again, I think this is an opportunity for the private sector, when I say the private sector, a nonprofit, to raise money for their organization to provide something for our community, which would be really awesome.
Mayor, I don't disagree, but it's also going to be challenging for Parks and Rec to go out and start talking to nonprofits about potentially having a beer garden where they can raise money if we haven't secured a band, because we're waiting to get these partnerships in place before we can move forward.
Right.
I think Alderman Best has a question, and I'm ready to make a motion.
Alderman Best?
Yes, since you want to make this a city-sponsored event, so you are going to try to get sponsorship for that additional $6,500?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm on the
absolutely.
committee,
Okay.
and we plan on getting sponsorships.
Now, I do have to concur with Alderman Bingham on the statement she made about other community organizations wanting to have events, and they come to the city and ask for money to sponsor those events. So in that case, then we should tell them yes, correct? That was just my statement. So I love to see this event, but if I'm just going to use several organizations here in New Bern. I know they're sponsoring events, and they have said they've come to the city to ask for sponsorship, and they did not receive it. So,
What committee?
That's come here, or the committee?
What committee? You said you were on the committee. I didn't know what committee.
I'm going to be on the committee to help with the New Year's Eve.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you obviously have to have a committee when you're doing event planning, so I'm sure you're going to need help with anything and going out, and I mean, seeking sponsorship is the easiest part of an event, I believe. The difference between a city actually putting an event on and then a nonprofit coming and asking for sponsorship is different, which I do agree with Alderman Mrs. Best. I know at one point the city did do sponsorships. I wasn't on the board. I don't know what happened then. That is something that we can look into. But I don't want that to get tangled in the fact that this is still a great opportunity for individuals and for the city to do this and partner with nonprofits.
well, if you're getting your sponsorship for the $6,500, that is great.
I'm gonna get it for you.
But there'll be more cost above and beyond.
I know.
I think that it will cost more above and beyond that. And again, we made Barry Mary, I don't know why, I must have missed that, Alderman Odom, but when Barry Mary came before in November, is that when you also included the New Year's Eve at that
Correct.
point? Okay, because I remember we made Barry Mary Christmas a city-sponsored event. They're already out there doing that. That's sponsored by the Downtown Council. They go out and raise $20,000 or more to put that on event. I had asked about folding this under them, but there's some little bit of competition in the sponsors, and we have a sponsor at our door waiting to pay us money now that wouldn't sponsor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
On the other side, if we did it with Barry Mary. So again, I don't want to try to muddy the waters. Are we competing now with sponsors trying to go out and get more sponsorship dollars? Or Barry Mary's out trying to get sponsorship dollars? Just lots of questions.
Okay, if there's no further discussion or questions at this time, we'll have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingham.
Well, we don't have a
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the budget ordinance
I'm
amendment
sorry.
for FY 17-18 general fund for the New Year's Eve event.
Seconded.
Motion by Alderman Odom, seconded by Alderman Harris. Sorry about that. Have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingham.
Alderman Bingle?
No.
Alderman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries at this time. Going to go to appointments, and Alderman Odom, do you have any?
No, sir, not tonight.
Alderman Best?
No, I do not.
I don't know who has the Fire Museum Board appointment, but Henry Watson is showing interest in that.
It would be great.
And, he would be very,
It would be great.
very good. He's a great photographer
I
and
think
all kind of,
Alderman
I
Best.
do.
do,
You talking about Henry Watson?
yeah, he
Was
was,
with the city of Newburgh?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Fire inspector.
If, and they are looking for somebody.
I think Alderman Best, you have an appointment, don't you?
Yes, I did.
And I know they've interviewed him, so
Oh, really?
you might want to just talk to Nancy.
Right, I left a call with her, and when her husband is sick, so she has not gotten back with me, but
Well, call Dave Finn,
you haven't.
and I'll be glad to give you his number.
Okay.
You did?
Alderman Ashton.
Nothing.
Okay, Alderman Harris.
No,
Any
ma'am.
appointments? Alderman Bingle.
No, sir.
Okay. This time we have the attorney's report
Nothing important tonight, Mayor.
and the city manager's
I have
report.
nothing, sir.
Sir?
I have nothing, sir.
Okay, this time we'll go to new business with Alderman Bingle.
Mr. Stevens, I thought we had an excellent workshop last Monday night on the tools for use in a URA, or redevelopment commission, that we talked about. So at this time, I just want to know where we're at and how we're moving forward from that evening. Because we talked about the private sector coming in, speaking to us, and some other things we needed to do. Just want to get an idea how we're moving forward.
Yeah, and if you recall at the redevelopment workshop that we had, we also kind of bounced around the idea of having Tyler Mulligan come. City Attorney and I have talked, and we think that, at the end, the legal ends of things, Scott feels very comfortable with. And so what we kind of put our heads together and thought that it would probably be advisable for us to go ahead and look at drafting up the legal paperwork for putting together a redevelopment commission with some fill in the blanks about what needs to be done, and provide it to this board as a draft, whether we need to do that as an additional work session so that we can go over some of the finite details or whatever. That's one thing. I think we do need to have another work session to discuss some details about what needs to happen, and I think it probably needs to be broken down a little bit into what the board wants to reach out to me and let me know specifics about what you want to talk about, because ultimately there are various items. I mean, it could be housing, it could be, facade programs, it can be infrastructure improvements, it could be all kinds of different things within this redevelopment commission. Obviously, you're going to need to look at appointments. How many do you want? How many? What fields do you want them to be in, or if you want that? A lot of that stuff weighs into some of the way these legal documents are going to be drafted up. So
timeline. What are we talking about?
Next meeting. Well, I'll have it on the agenda for you next meeting. I'll have a
Well,
draft.
I would rather us have you bring it to a work session rather than a meeting where we could sit around and really delve into it and ask some questions, you could have some takeaway and then actually bring us a document to a meeting where we decide, yay
Yes,
or
ma'am.
nay.
And I think we're overcomplicating this
Yeah, I
first
think so,
step. The first step, it's like creating a corporation, right? You go to a lawyer, if you want to start a business, you file articles of incorporation, and you get some bylaws.
Right.
And guess what? Now you're a company.
Right.
That's
Okay.
the easiest part. The hard part is now making it work. So step one is actually setting it up, and there's only 2 or 3 variables. How many members do you want to serve, and how long do you want their terms to be, and do you want them staggered or not? So we can certainly do that in 10, 15 minutes, or we can do it in a work session.
Say that, and we get it.
but,
I just
um,
want to move the process along.
yes,
I don't want to
ma'am.
drag it out.
Last I knew, I thought me, you, and Miss Barbara were supposed to meet with Jeffrey Jerry's. Well, I don't know who was going to set that meeting up
Right.
for us to create the boundaries.
Yes, ma'am. And
that's-
you won't create them. What you'll do is you'll explore, because
Okay,
the second step,
explore.
that's where every step is tougher than the step before.
Okay.
The second step is now having that commission and then going to the planning commission, who actually helps determine what the boundaries are going to be and makes the recommendation. So what I would recommend to you is this board give the planning commission some direction on what you're thinking the boundaries might be. Then they make a recommendation back to you. Then we'll have the commission in place, and the 3 boards will ultimately bless the boundaries.
Oh, wow.
So those are the steps that take more time. The first step is the easier step of all of them.
So you're,
I feel like we need to maybe have another work session and discuss this, because all in my mind is at the end, I know that regardless of, what's going on, I would like to be sitting on that commission to help make decisions, because I feel like that's very imperative. So I don't know how that narrative is going to work out on these 3 different things, because that's why I feel like we need to be able to ask
That's
more
a
questions.
legal question that I have to ask, because I know on the Housing Authority Board, an alderman cannot sit on that commission. I don't know how a redevelopment commission
Yeah,
would,
I would have
that
to.
you would have to ask that question.
I would have to think about that.
We might be ex officios on there, but I don't know if we'd be voting members on
Yeah,
there.
I'd want to think about that. Your 2 big flavors are this board serves as the commission, or you have an independent commission.
Correct.
There are some statutory preclusions to public officials serving on things more than 2 different boards. So that can be a little challenging. So that's a big issue that you got to decide on the front.
Well, these are the kind of questions I think we need for you to
Okay.
at least get some answers to, so we can come to a workshop and
Okay.
you can advise us, so we would have more of that information.
Okay.
And I think we as a board need to think about maybe reread the PowerPoint that Marcia gave us that talked about the number of people and the different things, so that we're able to come back and answer questions for you. So when you say to us, okay, how many people are you thinking?
Right.
At least we'll have some answers. We know it's a minimum 5, maximum 9, and we can go from there and whatever.
now, to my knowledge, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought with the presentation from school government that she said that members of this board could sit on that
Right,
committee.
that's what I'm saying.
Well, you can serve as that committee, and I'm not saying there's not a preclusion, but that becomes a political issue that requires a lot of discussion. As to,
She said we could serve, but then we would not have anybody else. The Board of Aldermen would be the commission. That's what she was talking
No,
about.
We
this
asked
is
her
what we
if
asked.
individuals can, if we don't do it that way,
Yeah.
can an individual or maybe 2 or 3 of us serve on that special board?
And that's why Jamie and myself said we would serve, and then you said, well, our board's joined, so I'll
Yes,
serve as
right,
well.
yeah. I guess I
We
misunderstood.
can rock,
I-
paper,
If
scissors,
you
out,
clar-
3 of
I
us.
mean, regardless, if you
Yeah,
could
we do.
clarify that,
happy
that
to
would
give
be
you an
helpful.
answer, and it may also be a function too of what other boards you serve on. So you may have to resign from another board to be able to serve on this one.
This is the only board I serve on, so.
Do you want to set a date?
Yeah, I mean, I want
Workshop?
to like to roll this
let's
if
pull
we
our
could,
calendars
because there's going to be lots and lots of discussion involved in this, and the more we can keep it moving, I think the better it's going to be.
How are we looking on April 6th? It's a Friday.
Oh my God,
I'm good.
That's tough.
Okay.
You said it's tough?
Yeah, that's tough.
That's Easter week.
Oh, Easter
Huh?
week.
Let's give the city attorney a little bit more time than
What,
that.
Easter's on
yeah,
Correct.
I'm going to be out of town.
Okay.
the week of the, I can, the week of the 9th, I can do most anything.
Okay, how about well, not Friday the 13th, but if you want to do it,
We have a
Do-
school
do-
of government
Do
at
you
2
want to come to
o'clock.
this meeting early? Come to Tuesday at 5?
We already have that
CBC
meeting.
meetings.
You do?
That's from 12:30 to
Okay.
2. So what about in between that? Or we're not trying to be here all day?
Wait a second, oh, that's the school of government, we all have different, then we have to come
Oh,
back,
that's right.
yeah.
How about the
forgot.
11th?
I can do the 11th.
Yeah, 11th at what time?
And I can do whatever. And you
If we
name-
could do,
Afternoon.
yeah, afternoon, but not till 5, because there's an event at 5 that we need to be at
Yeah,
as the
5:30,
board.
the Craven one,
Yeah.
the lines, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe 12 to 4, if it needs to be that long.
This will not take that long.
Okay,
It won't.
whatever time, it's just before 5:30, I'm good
What
on
kind of
that.
time you need? An hour?
An hour, yeah.
So let's just say 12 to 1:30,
Sure.
lunch.
Is that a motion? Here?
Okay, now that's 12 to 1:30 on the 11th,
Yeah, here,
Correct.
let's do it here.
Yes.
All right.
City Hall.
Is that good?
April 11th?
Is everybody good with that?
You want a motion on that, or?
Yes, sir, please.
We have a motion, second on that?
I make a motion that we have a workshop.
Special meeting.
I make a motion that we call a special meeting to discuss the redevelopment commission legal makeup on Wednesday, April the 11th, from 12 to 1:30 here at City Hall.
Second.
Motion and a second, any
Jamie to
discussion?
bring lunch.
No.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. See everybody on the 11th at 12 o'clock.
Okay, the only other thing, I know we're still on new business. Okay, Mr. Stevens, I'm your worst nightmare. A disability working group, going to ask it again until I know that it's been done. So, Mr. Ruggieri, I'm sorry, I'm your worst nightmare. But anyway, I still would like to see that happen, and I'd like to be notified when we're going to call them together and talk about maybe appointing some people or bringing some people together, ready to get it done.
If you have some names in mind, that would
I
help
do.
us out. I know Sherry Moyers is all I've heard.
Well, no,
so
I've got several people. Darcy Hildreth, I'd like for her, especially with
can
Brandon. I
you
will send
email
to
them to me?
Happy to do
That would be great.
Happy.
And if you
I've
even
got
have the
about 4 or
contact.
5 names I can email you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. So I have 2 things. I had did some extra research on the information that I brought back from DC about the Opportunity Zone, and some new information came up in the news that it may possibly in the future, I don't know how far in the future, it may alleviate the whole block grant process. And I know that it was stated that the city of New Bern may not be ready for that. But based on the wording and the information, I feel that I don't think it will hurt us to give the city manager direction to at least send out that letter to the governor so that we can be zoned as opportunity zones, so that if we ever do get to that point and they alleviate this other type of credit or funding, that we're already set up in Craven County by the governor, because we need to, basically the letter is going to ask him to extend the application process so that he can apply, so that, you know, the governor only gets so many cities that they can deem that is urban, low income, 80% or 20% living in this low income area that need redevelopment. And so we need, it's a possibility that if this changes where we have to use this to redevelop or do anything like that, we're already zoned as an opportunity zone. And I feel like we should move forward and at least have that designation on Craven County, because we have that situation going on now, and it could be a possible tool in the future. And I spoke to Mr. JR about that, and I think I presented it pretty well. And so I think if we can give direction, I don't know how to do that in regards to say that I would like that to happen.
To see if the board wants to do that or not. Do you want to make a motion?
Is it just a resolution? Is that what we would need to do?
No, I don't think we need to do a resolution, maybe just a letter to the governor stating, can you,
We need a resolution.
Jamie, when I was reading that information, we might be already zoned that, so you might just be a matter of fact of checking, because when I was reading that information, I couldn't get to the map to actually pinpoint if the city of New Bern was one of those areas. So that may be.
okay, so then maybe from the last meeting when I asked someone to research it for me, okay, so then we need to go down that route. But either way, if we're not, I don't want the time
Right,
to
exactly.
Right, and then we lose out because it's gonna be over, it's 10 years that you're labeled as the opportunity zone. So if we miss out, that's 10 years where we don't have an opportunity to service individuals based on this tool in the toolbox. And so.
So then do you
So
just
the-
want, make a motion that we send a resolution of support to the governor that we be included as an opportunity zone city? Is that what you would do?
It'd probably be advisable for us to draft the resolution with the board approving the resolution if you're going to choose to do so as a full board. Let us check on this application process. I mean, I don't know what the process is. So I'm more than happy to check into that.
If you go online, if you pull up Opportunity Zone and go online, you can go under North Carolina Opportunity Zone.
Okay.
And there's a number that you could call the Department of Commerce. And I will tell you that I have called the Department of Commerce, left 2 messages saying, I am Alderman Sabrina Bengal, I need to have information, they have not returned my phone calls. So maybe you have a connection inside the Department of Commerce, and maybe somebody could tell you, but I did try to get additional information. I do think I understand it, though, that, and I hear what you're saying, we're not ready for it now, we might be ready for it in 10 years. Basically, an opportunity zone means that an investor can come in, if it's an opportunity zone, and build and do different things, and they're going to get tax credits and other benefits from their investment. Is that correct, Mr. Ruggieri? That's not correct? I know it was somewhat explained to me, but I'm not. It has to do with personal investment, not a city's investment. But with that being said, 10 years, we might not be ready for it now, but if you're saying it's good for 10 years, we could be in a different
Is there a
position.
deadline?
Yes, and I mean, I can sit here within my session and I have it pulled up and explain it in detail, but I've done that on my last one, explaining that it really is a benefit. And so I feel like that's why maybe individuals may not understand the concept right now, that I don't want to miss out on being designated that if we're not already designated, because this is something kind of brand new, trickling down from the new tax act that was just passed. So this is not, there's no way that we could already be designated that, because this is coming from the new, the new
benefits
situation.
your taxes.
Right.
If somebody invests money in property and rebuilds and do things, they get tax advantages.
So when's the deadline?
The deadline was March 21st to do it, but you can, the application deadline is April 21st, but we just need to get a letter. We need to let the governor know that please look at us as an opportunity zone. And that's just simply, I don't know if you need a resolution, I don't know that legal standpoint, but I'd call them up and say, hey, can you?
I couldn't get a phone call.
Right, I just need to know direction.
Can the board make a motion and get approval that the mayor send a letter to
Sure,
the governor?
Mayor can send a letter to
asking
the
for
governor
it?
saying we want to be in, and
Okay.
just recognizing
Let's get
that
about the
we
same
don't
thing about
all understand exactly what it means, but you can do that in just a letter.
Hand me that letter ready if the board wants to make that motion, and let's do that.
Okay, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that that a letter is drafted so that it could be sent to the governor stating that Craven County could be zoned or designated as an opportunity zone for the near future if we ever need to utilize that tool when it comes to low-income communities.
Can I second that with an amendment? That it says Craven County, more specifically New Bern. I think as the mayor, you need to use the word New Bern in there. You can't just ask for the county. He does not have the power to ask for the county, but he certainly does for the city. So I would amend that to include
Okay,
Craven County
the
specifically.
second, Mr. Davis, was Alderman Bass, but Alderman Bingham has wanted to put an amendment, but that would be in the form of a substitute motion.
Yes, sir.
And so at that time, would she need a substitute motion second?
Or you can send that.
Beg pardon?
Yes to your question.
Okay, and then we'll vote on the substitute motion?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second to the substitute motion?
I'll second the substitute.
So we have a second to the substitute motion. All in favor of the substitute motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Then lastly, I would like to point out that April 14th through the 28th is Litter Sweep for North Carolina. And basically what you do is people in the community get together, you volunteer, and you clean up the community. Am I correct? So this would be a great idea. I'm really gonna push this avenue because, you know, it's a way to just get out and take care and clean up some of the areas where it looks pretty bad, and we have an ability as volunteers to go out there and help and do it on this special day. So that's April 14th to the 28th, so you will see me out there with Wash Away Unemployment and Project Restore and our nonprofits on what we do, and we get out there because we did it last year. We actually had a cookout, and we were over actually by Commissioner Sampson's house, and we went in that neighborhood and cleaned up. We made a day of it, so we plan on doing it again. So I hope anyone watching or listening that you too get out in your community and clean up the litter.
And
Is there any way that we can put this on the city of New Bern's?
Yeah, Colleen's gonna do that. And we
Not
also,
quite like that.
Alderman Harris, you know, if there's some strategic locations we want to put dumpsters, we can do that for the neighborhoods too.
Awesome, okay.
And we can,
That's good.
okay. And so, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Alderman Astor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that Caton Utilities or Caton Plumbing Company, along with the city staff on the Park Avenue project, has done a wonderful job. Have not heard nothing but good. Gentleman called me the other night. Actually, it was Saturday night. I was down in Myrtle Beach, and he said he had a sewer leak, and I got on the telephone and called control, and he called me back a couple hours later and said, hey, it was taken care of right away, and thanks. But Caton, is it Caton Utilities or Caton Plumbing? Caton Utilities has just done an outstanding job. Their customer service is excellent. And also, Jordan, your staff has been doing a wonderful job over there. Looks like the work is going along pretty good. And do you want to talk about EMS? You want me to bring it up?
Oh, please go right ahead. As long as if that's a good idea.
Mayor Outlaw and I were having a conversation about the EMS Bike-a-thon that we have every year. And one of the things, I mean, this is a wonderful benefit to our community to have all these people here. But one of the things that they have asked for is a little more involvement, at Union Point Park. And they have actually requested the possibility of a bonfire, or something, so they can all get around the bonfire and have community time, I reckon. But yeah, I don't know what they. I don't know. Foster and Chief Boyd, I reckon that's two of your right up. If we could do it in the park, any way you see it possible that we could support a bonfire at Union Point Park. It's what they're asking for, and if other communities are offering it, we don't want them to move to another community because of something as simple as a bonfire and a little community time. So I don't know, how many people do they bring in here?
They bring over 2,500 riders and guests come in every year. This was started back in the early 2000s. I was really excited to be part of bringing the first group here. And I want you to know that every city, Wilmington, Greenville, they're constantly bidding to try to get this group to come to their city, but they love New Bern. They love being here. They've been treated so well. We want to continue.
But I understand that there's some of the riders are saying, hey, let's go, let's go to other places. And when the mayor was talking to them, they said, well, what can we do to help? They suggested maybe a nighttime bonfire or something like that. And if something that simple will keep these people here, we love having them here. So can we tell them that we'll be able to provide that?
Yes, I'll do it, Chief.
I see the chief turn a little red.
What's the budget amendment on that one?
I don't know if it'll be.
I'll bring it.
I don't know the size, nothing, but that's all we're gonna do is look into what we can and all that.
Sure.
Okay. Basically, they're yelling out of the control room here. They couldn't hear what you were saying. So.
Live from City Hall.
That's right.
The code does allow, there are some stipulations, and I've got Fire Marshal Hill doing some research and finding out what we can and cannot do.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be glad to help with any of we know some people that are in the tree business that could possibly provide the logs and whatever it takes to do it. I think it'd be nice if we could tell them that we're going to do it for them this year.
I'll volunteer for singing for the Kumbayas.
And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. You have something else?
Yes, thank you, because I just wanted to point out that Mr. Matt Montaigne is amazing, because I called on him for 2 things and got it taken care of. So I just wanted to say thank you, and Avery as well. They took care of something over in the Pembroke area where it was going on for a while, and a week it was done. And so I really appreciate that. You guys are amazing. So I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Also, that sidewalk project.
Yes, thank you.
That was another good one.
The sidewalk is gorgeous over there, and it's safe, and we really appreciate that they got that done as well. They took care of that. So thank you very much.
Okay.
I promise I'm done.
All the best.
Yes, I'd like to as well thank the Fire Chief Board. Thank you. I had requested something of you, and you jumped right on it, and I appreciate that. Also, Mr. Montaigne and Mr. Hughes, I appreciate all you do as well. I asked you to do something, and wow, you jumped right on it. And I cannot forget Mr. Hughes back there as well. Thank you for helping me with the Pleasant Hill issue. Secondly, in our February 27th meeting, we also discussed about having a work session or meeting or something in reference to the utility deposits, fees, which has not come about yet. So I want to know, when can we schedule that soon, Mr. Sabatelli? Or
I've got a great deal of information already gathered up. Ready to put it into presentation format for you all. Really, just establish it there. Whenever you all want to set up the meeting, we can work on make sure we meet that goal to have it ready for you.
okay, well, that's left up to the board when we can schedule a time for that.
I mean, if we're already going to be here on that date, was it 30 minutes, 15, 45? Can we include it in what we're
In the
already
April
here?
11th meeting?
Yeah.
Will you be ready by then?
I'm sorry?
Or is that something you want to present at a meeting? Or is that something you want to present at a meeting?
I would prefer that we have it as special,
workshop.
yeah.
At a special meeting, I can work on having it ready for you all.
Is that giving you enough time, April 11th? If not, we can schedule.
I can
some
make,
other time.
I can do whatever I can to make that work. The only concern I have is if y'all are looking for a short meeting, I don't know if that would be short or not, depending on the questions and things like that you might have. So, in just respect for y'all's time, I don't know how long it would take.
You're thinking it may take, or
I would put it with the agenda for April the 11th. If that's what we're meeting on April 11th for a workshop. Could we talk about it at that same time during the day, or does this need to be in the evening? I mean, what is the board?
That's what we're talking about, is that he's saying it may not be short if we have a short time frame during that meeting.
What is your time
Extended, he's saying, how long do you think it's going to take, an hour or more?
based on our questions?
I think our presentation will be relatively quick. It depends on the questions that the board has and things like that.
Are you ready? Is it ready?
No, the presentation itself is not ready yet. I've got to get it together, but I do have all the information together. I just have to put it in a presentation and make sure I have it in a nice package to present to you all.
Can you do it by the 11th?
Yeah, I'll get it together for you by the 11th.
We're going to have to change it now.
Yeah, well, we'll have to change the special meeting, but how would you want to?
A motion to add this item to that special meeting date.
Okay.
You want to do that?
Mr. Sabatelli, is that going to give you enough time? Because I don't want to press you for time. I know you have a lot of other pressing.
I've got a lot of stuff going on, but at the same time, I'm more than happy to get this together for you all. I've got a great staff that has got me a lot of information. It's just putting it all together. So I will do everything I can to have it ready.
We're already here, so go ahead.
I'm more than happy to have it ready.
All right. Well, I make the motion that we include a special session meeting along with the redevelopment meeting to include on April 11th at 12.
It was 12 to 1:30 now.
12 to 1:30.
To discuss what?
To discuss utility deposit fees rates.
Let's just change it to starting at 12 because we don't know how.
Starting at 12.
Yes, sir, that's fine. No end date.
Okay, everybody understand that motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
We have a second. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries.
I have one other item. Also on January 27th, I asked about the bathroom situation over at the Fort Totten location, and I just wanted to know if that issue's been addressed and that the citizens that come in to pay their utility bills have a restroom to use at this time.
Yes, ma'am. We are allowing citizens to use the restroom. The customers that come in to use the restroom, they're guided back. Staff is there with them because they are going through our offices. However, we've secured a few bids and to actually renovate Mr. Anderson's office. It turned it into actually a public restroom, full ADA compliance and whatnot. So we're hoping to have that completed, hopefully within the next few months. So that way they'll actually have their own specific restroom. We won't have to use staff restrooms.
Okay. Also, so you're telling me that customers coming into that office, there is a sign saying restroom facilities?
No, we're not advertising it now.
I mean, but some of those customers may still be under the impression, because of how it was in the past, that they cannot use bathroom in their office.
Yeah, we've not gone that far with it.
Okay.
However, someone does need to use it and says, do we have a restroom? We've let them utilize our facilities.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that the customers are aware of this, because I know a lot of them are saying that they're going over to the Fort Totten Parks bathroom.
Yeah.
So right now, in my mind, if I was a customer and the way that it was existed before, there was no bathrooms, I still wouldn't know that there's a bathroom facility in that building for me to use.
Yeah, and I understand that. Like I said, we're not advertising, but somebody does need to. We guide them back and whatnot. But like I said, once we get the new restroom built, there will be signage up that says that this is a public restroom.
So you're saying that's about 3 months out?
That's my guess at this
Okay.
point. I don't want to be held to any
I got you.
stuff at this point.
I'm not gonna hold you
We're
to it.
finalizing it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, Alderman Odom.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Do we need a closed session tonight?
No, sir.
Anything further to come before the board of Aldermen at this time?
Mayor, let me make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Motion